Mr. Rodet. I'm the director for the orchestra, and this is our string ensemble, or actually our string quartet. So we have, actually I'll have them introduce themselves. Emma Rose.
Hi, I'm Emily Rose. I'm a junior.
Hi, I'm Isaac Wayne. I am a freshman. I'm a freshman.
Hi, I'm Patrick Marino, and I'm also a freshman.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Stocka, and I'm a sophomore.
Emily, did you want me to jump in with a group today?
No, that's not fun.
They'll be playing.
That's not even almost.
They'll be playing Air from Suite in D.
This is why I love doing this job.
Oh, these guys
Great
are
job,
awesome.
guys. I mean,
Thank you very much.
unbelievable. Well done. You guys have questions? Anybody?
That's
Absolutely.
phenomenal. Can you each maybe just tell how long you've been playing your particular instrument?
I think 9 years at this point.
9 years. Wow.
No, I didn't start with you guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
I've been playing for 7 years, since 3rd grade.
And I have been playing for 8.
Excellent. And how long would it take to learn a piece like that?
We
This
learned in
particular piece.
4 days.
No, this one was a little bit longer because we got it last week.
Yeah, last
Days? Okay. That's incredible. Congratulations.
Nice. Anybody else?
I can speak to how incredibly hard that is because Emily tried to teach me how to play the violin, and she was an excellent teacher. She was patient. And what would you describe the sound that I created? Maybe strangling a cat?
I would say it was a remarkable job, especially because I threw a bow at you first day.
But she
I
was
hope you
great.
hit him with it.
But it's very You guys are awesome.
Thanks.
I just want to say thank you. You know, having been a musician myself for over 20 years and not being able to do anything nearly as complicated as that, I just want to say thank you. It's amazing to see the level of expertise you have, with all of you basically having less than 10 years of experience on the instrument. It's just amazing to see what that level of potential is going to be over the next 10 years, and you're already extremely consummate. So thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you as well for inviting us.
You're welcome.
You're
Thank you,
always
guys.
welcome.
All right, thanks for
Yeah, it's very good.
They can go right.
All right. Good evening. Today is Thursday, February 7th. Today's school committee meeting is being broadcasted through local media outlets that are present. If you wish to have a copy of this, please reach out to myself, the superintendent, or the media outlets. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment of silence for Aaron Zenas, who recently passed away due to some complications that he had. I can only imagine what these parents are going through, so if you guys don't mind, I'd like to take a moment of silence. First on the agenda is the approval of minutes. I'm assuming everyone had the chance to read the minutes. Anyone have any questions? Chris?
No questions, sorry.
All right, can I get a motion to?
Can I just?
Yep.
On the school liaison number 8C, it was myself that updated the committee for Brookside on the Hawk Incentive Program and the Box Program.
Okay.
So that's 8C.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else?
Just page 3, Shining Star versus Start.
Can you say that again, Meg?
Shining Star versus Start.
Oh, okay. Just a typo. Perfect.
And can I get a motion to accept the minutes? Motion by Megan, second by Jim. All in favor? Next on the agenda is announcements, correspondence, and distributions.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, Chris. Just want to let everybody know the Milford Special Education Parent Advisory Council will be meeting next week. It's next Wednesday, February 13th, from 6:30 to 7:30. It will be at Woodland Elementary School. And there will be 2 informative topics that will be presented. Tim Kernan, the Woodland principal, will speak about anti-bullying. And Dr. Robin Bradica, who is a parent and CPAC officer, will be discussing MCAS testing. All Milford families are welcome to attend. So if you have any questions, please reach out to the CPAC group.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Anybody else? You got any? Oh, I'm
Maybe
sorry,
just-
Megan.
That's okay. Maybe just quickly 2 things. Last week I had the opportunity to listen to Joni Geltman, who talked about social media. It was a fantastic presentation, especially as with a middle school student who's entering those years where there's access to those things. So I thought she did a phenomenal job. So thanks to the Education Foundation, Hawking University. I thought it was.
Was it a good crowd?
It was a decent crowd. It was the night that it was like sleeting and the snow squall.
Oh,
So I
right.
think probably some people in negative temperatures. Probably some people maybe were detracted for that, but she gave a lot of great tips and tricks and shared a ton of useful information, so I thought that was a great presentation. And last night also was the school's vertical concert, so all of our instrumentalists in the band, grades 5 through 12, performed, and it was incredible. I mean, certainly, the skill level here is above and beyond, but just they did a phenomenal job, and it's really inspiring to see that level and age variety together performing. And they do one performance of one song all together, and it was great. So thanks to the instructors
and I know there was
there.
a good
It
turnout
was great.
there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. To that point, real quick, is there any way that presentation could be online? If anyone wanted to see it, is that
The
possible?
social, I think when we have speakers like that, they tend not to allow us to
Okay.
tape it and put it up.
Just
But generally, we do when
Yep.
we can.
Anybody else?
Oh, I've got one actually, real quick, Joe.
Yep.
I just want to remind everyone that kindergarten parent information and pre-registration night is Tuesday, February 26th, here at Milford High School. It begins at 6 o'clock in the Milford High School auditorium.
Okay, moving along. Next on the agenda is invitation to speak. Does anyone out there want to come up? All right. Just before you sit down, or you can sit down. Usually, how this
Yeah,
works.
feel free to sit.
You can
Please sit down.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll give you 5 minutes.
Sure.
We'll hear you out. We're not obligated to rebuttal. This isn't really a back and forth type
Yep.
of deal. We'll look at it. We'll hear what you have to say, and then
Sure,
if it is, we'll
sure.
go
I
forward.
understand.
So by all means.
Thank you,
Introduce
everyone,
yourself, yeah.
for allowing me to come here and speak tonight. My name's Kathleen Donovan, for those of you who do not know me. And I have a daughter who's in 6th grade at Stacy. And I'm here to discuss the grading process for specials as it relates to the honor roll. So I understand that the specials are not on the midterm progress reports that go out. So there's really no way for parents to take corrective measures if there's a grade that's subpar, meaning that they're not going to make the honor roll. So I was hoping that maybe you guys could consider either having them added to the progress reports or lowering maybe the threshold for what that grade should be as it relates to honor roll. My daughter did not make high honors and received great grades, but was kept from honor roll as a result of this. So that's why I'm here to discuss, and hopefully you guys will consider changing that.
Great. We'll definitely.
All right?
look
Thank you
into
so
it.
much.
Thank you
All
for
right,
your time.
thank you.
Thank you for coming forward. Next on the agenda is student recognition. Want to take that away?
Do you have the list?
Oh, I do not.
All right, I'll take it over here. Okay, there, here. All right. So do you want to?
Yep, so what we're
Craig,
gonna,
can you give me pictures?
the first on the list is the Worcester County Superintendent Assistant Association Scholars Award.
All right, so if I could have Riley Campbell and Johnny Pano please come forward. All right, you want to shake hands, we'll get Craig to take pictures. So get it in a good spot so you get a good picture. You're not gonna glom up the production.
Let me get out of the way.
No, you're good. All right, so Riley first.
It didn't go?
Okay, I'll take one.
All right.
Take your time. It's important.
And next. Brendan O'Shaughnessy. All right, come on up. And Cassandra Probert. And both of you are receiving the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Certificate of Academic Excellence. So Brendan first. Congratulations, okay up there. All right. Congratulations, Brendan. Your certificate. Nice job.
You can't have two.
Cassandra, congratulations. And Alife and Maria, please come forward for the National School Development Council Award for Academic Growth and Student Leadership in Learning. Let's have Maria first. Congratulations, Maria. All right, come on up, sir. That's always the goal. You got it? Yeah, it's good to shake with you too. All
right, so congratulations to all of you. Well done. I'm sure it's well deserved on all of you. I'm sure you all worked really hard for all of that stuff too. So congratulations to all of you. Do you guys have any questions for these guys, or?
Just congratulations. What an amazing work. Thank you so much.
Are you all seniors? I'm just curious. Everyone's a senior?
Yeah.
Would you each be willing maybe just come up and share one thing that, some kind of, something about your experience at MHS? So obviously you just received an award, so maybe share one thing that you believe maybe contributed to that? Anyway, if you want to, no pressure. I would just love to hear from you.
I'd love to hear from you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one down.
You got the award, so it's
Yeah,
okay.
there we go. One thing I've probably learned over the 4 years is that nothing bad comes from hard work, I guess. Like staying busy and always being active in the community is always a good thing. I don't know.
What's the plan next year?
Top school is probably going to be UVM up in Burlington.
Okay.
Study electrical engineering, work on alternative energy to help save the environment, and then see where that takes me. Hopefully a good place, but I don't know.
All right.
You know how life is.
Excellent.
Well, good
We
luck.
do.
Good luck. Thank you.
Johnny, why don't you jump up next? You seem eager to get up there.
Not great at speaking, but that's okay.
You've seen what we've been up to up here.
Yeah.
It's a low bar.
Over the 4 years I've learned a lot through like the different groups. Learned a lot about hard work and determination through sports and all that. Learned a lot about putting in like passion, kind of working with a team through like the music department, showing how all that pays off throughout the years. And I think if anything, probably just having all of those aspects all together has kind of built me up through the years and kind of made me who I am and brought me here. So I'm just glad for that.
And what's the plan next year?
I'm looking heavily at Northeastern for architecture.
Okay, great.
Nice.
Great.
Very good.
All right,
Good
awesome.
Good
Good
luck.
luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maria, you want to jump up?
They don't have a choice, do they?
No. That ship has sailed.
So, I'm Maria. I transferred to Milford freshman year. So over my 4 years, I've gotten to know Milford High School and my fellow students through all the clubs that I've been able to be a part of. I started Pen in a Box here at the high school, which was a really cool honor to be able to do last year. Milford High also gave me the opportunity to go to a program at Harvard last year, which was really cool. I got to hold a human brain, which is amazing. And I think being in all the clubs has shown me a lot about leadership and teamwork, so I'm grateful for that.
Nice. Awesome.
Thank you.
Riley, I don't know if you want to come up and.
So I think Milford High School has like brought a lot through like clubs and activities, because I've been involved in sports, music, so many clubs, and like all the teachers who are involved in that always help, and if you have any questions, like they never say no, they always help you with everything, and I think that's really like a great opportunity we have here.
And what's the plan next year?
I'm not sure where I want to go yet, but I definitely want to either go into pre-med or nursing.
Great.
That's awesome. Good luck.
Thank you.
She's hiding over there.
Hello guys, my name's Alife. It's a weird name, sorry.
I think it's a great name.
It's, it actually comes from the Bible. It's Portuguese.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that, like, ever since I've been here, it's like I never had any difficulty connecting with the teachers here. It's like they've always helped me get through my problems, you know, at home, and just like helping me at school, work, you know, because it's not always easy. But I just want to say thank you for all they've done for me, and I'm glad to be in MHS.
What's the plan next year?
Framingham.
All right, good for you. What are you gonna study? Do you know?
Huh?
You know what you're gonna study?
I just want to major in business. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Business management.
Good. And Maria, I never asked you that question. What's your plan for next year?
I don't have a school, but I want to do pre-med or art therapy.
Okay, great. Great, excellent. All right, well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, there's one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
She was hiding. And he thought you left.
Nice try.
Yeah.
I was trying to get a little bit of this. Okay.
It's like Fenway Park. There's like a hole there.
Well, at Milford High School, there's definitely always help from my advisors with all the clubs I've been involved with, especially like student leadership and being involved with 3 sports. There's always people to help you out and people to turn to if you ever have problems, and that's definitely one of my favorite parts about MHS, and I'm really grateful that I've been able to be a part of it for all 4 years. So, yeah.
And what's the plan?
I want to go out west to San Diego and study neuroscience at University of California, San Diego.
That's a pretty good plan.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
Fun. Yep, that's all.
All right, good luck.
Thank you.
So parents, you're more than welcome to stay for the duration of the meeting, but at this time, if you'd like to also head out for the evening, feel free to do that. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Congratulations. All right, moving along. Congratulations to all those students. That's awesome work. Next on the agenda is alternative education. Josh?
Okay, we're just gonna get some stuff up on the screen here.
It should be if you log in. The presentation should be right up there.
It's a much different environment. I was just down at the Disney party with my son and my wife for
the Brookside?
It's a very different dynamic. Everyone's looking at me as I get the suit jacket, and I'm like, what is he doing?
I think I need you to sign back in.
Okay. Yeah.
So while Dr. McIntyre is getting that set up, I just want to take a moment to thank you for taking time out of the meeting, both to welcome some of our musicians here to perform for the community tonight, and also to take time to recognize some of our very finest seniors on their accomplishments. I think it is really important for the life of the school that we recognize excellence and we celebrate excellence. And so I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy agenda this evening to make space for that and to celebrate our students' accomplishments in front of the whole community. So thank you for doing that.
Honestly, if we could have that every meeting, I don't think anyone would mind too much about it, because that was amazing.
That'd be amazing. That was amazing.
Can we work the slideshow for you?
We can take care of it, I guess.
You sure?
Yeah, sure. So, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you this evening about our alternative education program in Milford High School. This is my colleague Steve DeVito. Steve is the director of our Pathways program, which is our current alternative education program at Milford High School. And we have a brief presentation for you this evening to share with you the work that we've been doing to roll out what we hope to be a new and improved alternative education program in the 2019-2020 school year. So with that, we can get started.
I'm going to stand. Is that alright? You want me to stay or stand or?
I think whatever you're comfortable
with.
with. If you want to do a little dancing like you did down at the Brookside,
no,
that'd be fine too.
I wasn't doing a lot of dancing. So I'm just going to start off by just kind of giving a brief overview of basically what Pathways has been with its existence. So we started back in 2012, and it's been running through the present. We did not add any new students this year to our cohorts, basically for this planning purpose. We've had anywhere from 15 to 35 kids. So our first year we were at 15, and that's a much different setup because we were in the block schedule to where we were over the last couple of years with 7-drop-1. And when our cohorts were coming through in grades 10, 11, and 12, obviously we kind of grew as it went on. Okay. A lot of the students that were coming in had anywhere from our attendance issues to conduct issues, and a lot of them, I think you'll see here, the absenteeism is something that was on the rise, and for many, many different reasons. But that was a big reason, and obviously the failing of the classes was something that we looked at. So we tried to fit all of that in on kind of like a wide spectrum and kind of narrow the students down. The idea of Pathways was basically to make it different from the mainstream classroom, we'll call it. So as opposed to being in those big high-level classes, we tried to make them much smaller, 8 to 10 in a class, to give them a little bit more of an independent one-on-one type of instruction. The biggest thing that we found, though, over time was even though we were in smaller classes, we were still giving the same type of mainstream curriculum and instruction. So that was some of the things we were wrestling with, because granted we were different in a smaller class, but some of the stuff that they were learning in those classes was still difficult for them to kind of comprehend and learn and want to follow through with, if that makes sense. We had an online credit recovery program called Apex, which we'll get into a little bit later in this. Became kind of the bane of our existence there for some time. It's a nice software program, but for us it became a big time problem. And then in the program, the way it was staffed was myself as the coordinator. There was an assistant coordinator at the time who really was the guidance counselor and worked with our students in a variety of ways. There was a special education teacher in the room, and we also had core academic teachers that were in there as well, kind of circling in and out throughout the day. The last piece of it up there is a teacher assistant who was in the room working in our computer lab and also in our classroom as well. So the way that we viewed ourselves, we'll go with the goods, the strengths first, okay? It was a definite effective dropout prevention program. 85% of the students that came through our program ended up graduating. So these were students that we identified as sophomores that were at high risk. And we felt as if nothing was done for them, they were going to be in a lot of trouble as far as being able to graduate. Our highest graduation rate was in 2016, where 92% of that cohort, when they started with us as sophomores, made it through and graduated by the time they were seniors. Our dropout rate was at 3.7 as a school in 2012 and dropped down to 2.1 in 2017. Now, granted, we know that Pathways wasn't the only reason why, but we felt that that played a large role in getting those dropout rates down. The one thing that I know I am high on, both here at school and coaching as well, is the SEL support system, right? Having that community feel, that feel of wanting to be there, building strong relationships with the kids throughout the school, but especially in our program, kind of having that tight-knit type group, okay? We had a dedicated counseling group that was coming in and out, along with our, call it assistant coordinator at the time, working with our students as well. So when we come over to the bads, I guess the concerns, our credit recovery program that I talked about, Apex, was kind of lowering the academic standards, because what ended up happening when we were working inside of our classroom, it was a little bit easier to work with our Apex credit recovery program, so we kind of noticed a bit of a step back from our students in the classroom so they could get to that Apex credit recovery program, which we felt like was kind of lowering that. Our graduates, the idea was not necessarily to give them the skill, so to say, that we're going to talk about a little later, but let's get them out, so to say, right? Let's get them to graduate. That was the push. And I think the biggest thing that we noticed was, again, this prepping them for the after high school life. What was going to take place after high school? What was their goal or their vision? Did they have one? And when they left here in June, were they just going to move on and have no plan, or were they going to have a plan? That's one thing that we felt that we weren't doing a great job of getting those kids ready, so to say. And then finally, the way that the cohort was compiled, we felt that a lot of times, if it wasn't working for one individual potentially in the school, it was like, well, Pathways will take care of it. Let's put a lot of our oppositional and defiant kids in one room. And I think we can all agree that when you put, some students that don't necessarily, I don't want to say get it, but get it, it's tough to get them to mold into exactly what it is you're looking for. So we kind of had this type of over-age, under-credited group, and it was really difficult to get 30 students all to kind of get onto the same page at the same time. So that's where our concerns and our failures really were over time.
So let me talk a little bit about sort of transition planning. So last year being my first year, I was coming in and trying to work with Steve and my colleagues to understand what our Pathways program was all about, and trying to speak to a lot of our different constituents about what they saw as the relative strengths and the areas for growth in our program. And I felt pretty strongly, and in speaking to my colleagues, it struck me that there was more or less a consensus amongst people involved in the program that sort of the moment was right to try to bring a shift into the way that we do alternative education at Milford. And one of my primary concerns in learning about Pathways that Steve spoke about earlier is Pathways was by and large a substantially separate program that offered students access to the mainstream curriculum and was serving primarily a group of students who were struggling with conduct issues. And from my perspective and from my previous experience, Pathways was not offering students a truly alternative way to complete high school. It was a substantially separate program for students at Milford High School, but not really a different way of completing a high school diploma. And I was really interested in working with Steve and our other colleagues who've been involved in the program and trying to develop a vision for a truly alternative way for students to earn their high school diploma. So we spent some time last year and this year engaged in transition planning. And so what this looked like is last year I asked Steve and a number of our administrators and me as well to go and visit a number of different sites outside of Milford that were engaging students in what we considered to be truly alternative models for completing a high school program. We had an intensive day here at Milford High School with a gentleman named Brian Stack. Brian is a principal in Sanborn, New Hampshire, and he came down here courtesy of the Nellie Mae Education Foundation. And Brian's been a really innovative school leader in what's called competency-based education, and really trying to rethink the whole high school model. And so he spent a full day with us, helping to teach us about competency-based education and helping us to sort of think through sort of our vision and our hope for what an alternative learning program could be. And in this current year, I tasked Steve with conducting a set of interviews with students and families and staff to try to tap into different constituencies' perceptions of what they believe a high-function alternative education program should look like. Steve's done an extensive amount of sort of academic and professional research into learning about different program models that exist. And we've invested a significant amount of time at the administrative level with Steve in sort of planning and sort of developing a shared vision for what this new program should look like. We've continued with off-site visits this year. We've also done some on-site consultations with DESE officials. And so just within, I think, the past month, we had Lisa Carney, correct, from the department who came out, who's sort of the leader within the department on alternative education and dropout prevention. So she came out here for an extended planning meeting with us as well. So the working title that we have for sort of our new program is Vision Plus. And I'm going to let Steve tell you about some of the core elements that we think this program should have.
So what we're looking for to shift our attention from the 10 to 12 model more into the 9 to 12 model. And this was something that I felt really strongly about, and I was really pleased when Josh shared this as well, that I didn't feel it was necessary to wait for students to fail after their freshman year to then identify them as students that were at risk. So I think it was necessary to have some strong lines of communication with our middle school and say, hey, listen, we have some students that are going to be coming up that they're going to need some help. How can we help them in the 9th grade immediately right away and try and work with them? And I think that's going to be one of the core things that we're going to work towards the change from Pathways, which was 10 to 12, and look at more of the 9 to 12 model. We're going to stick with a lot of the things that Pathways had, but I think the one thing that we didn't add in there was the disengagement piece of it. There are going to be students that, yes, are going to be chronically absent. Yes, they're going to have some chronic conduct issues, and yes, they're going to have some failures, but are they actually engaged with what it is that's going on? Or are there some students that may be flying under the radar, they may be borderline passing, but are they engaged? Are they enjoying what it is that they're doing in the classroom each and every day? How can we get them to really enjoy their experience here, and again, have that vision for what their next step is going to be? And we got to have buy-in. And I think that's an important thing, because in the past, when students would come in to Pathways, it was more of a, this is where you're going to go, this is what you're going to do. And they weren't buying into the concept of what an alternative style of learning is going to be. So they've got to really understand this style of learning that we're going to try and give to them and teach them and try and mold them is, you've got to buy in, you've got to want it, right? Like anything that we're ever going to want to do in a job, you've got to want it. This is going to be highly individualized, so it's going to take a lot of work, to work with each individual student, to work with their families, to work with special education teachers, to work with providers, to work with administration, to find that thing that they need, that trigger that is going to help them move forward. Project-based learning, I'm really high on project-based learning. I think with project-based learning you can really get really far, and there's a whole array of things that you can work with project-based learning. Important piece of this, the full access to our elective program here at Milford High School, because I know our administration, along with all of you, have worked really, really hard to expand our elective program here at the high school, and what we don't want to do is deprive students of being able to take that elective program if that's something that they would like to do. Our counseling services are definitely going to get a bit of an uptick with this, and we feel that our students, if they are constantly being worked with, helped with, coached, moved along through the system, and not just kind of brushed aside like, yeah, you're going to be okay today, let's move on. Like, no, we want to work with our students on a scheduled basis as often as humanly possible. And, on top of the social emotional piece, I want to work with their post-secondary plan. What are you going to do? What do you want to do? Where can you see yourself? Where do you envision yourself going down the road? And I think that's an important piece for kids to know, like, hey, they're invested in what it is that I want to do long-term and not over the next 4 years as well. So our CT and our work-based learning elements, that's going to come into our secondary plan as well. But I think working, Laura, you and I have been at a lot of these meetings with BVEF as well, and trying to find these opportunities for our students. Finding, like I said, that thing that they're really into, whether it's a construction, an automobile industry, or whatever the case may be. But it's, again, finding that thing that they're really interested in.
So I think one of the core sort of concept behind the program is really taking the fundamentals of what goes into a successful educational experience for kids and really trying to enhance each of those fundamentals, because we know that these are students who historically have not experienced success in school. School has not been working for them. And so we need to not only give them something different, but I think frankly need to give them something more. And so from my perspective, the fundamentals I think are really sort of 4 things. The first is rigor. And our plan in the alternative program is the way that we establish a rigorous program. It's not through online credit recovery, where kids are sort of interacting with a computer. It's through students working to demonstrate their proficiency on the learning standards through a portfolio that is a collection of their work over the course of a semester, a year, and a career here in high school. So a key element to our success is going to be having very clear, explicit definitions of what we expect students to be able to know and do in each of our disciplines, and then working with students to develop those individualized projects that give them an opportunity both to learn that content and those skills and to demonstrate their mastery of that content and of those skills. The second element is relevance, and I think this is an area in which I think an alternative program that's highly individualized has an opportunity to take a high school education, which for the disengaged student feels highly irrelevant, and try to make high school into something extraordinarily relevant and useful. So we hope that what Steve is going to be able to do and what our staff is going to be able to do is to work with students to identify that vision of where they want to be after high school, and then to make sure that their academic experience is anchored to that post-secondary vision. So for example, if we have a student, to use an example that Steve mentioned earlier and that I'm very fond of with our building trades program, if we have a student who's passionate and interested into going into the building trades, then we want to make sure that their core curricular experience is giving them ample opportunity to explore topics within the building trades that allow them to demonstrate their proficiency in the standards in English language arts, in social studies, and in science. And we'll talk a little bit about math in a bit, about how math we see us taking a slightly different approach. The third element is readiness. And so we need to ensure for an alternative program to be successful that the end game is not a high school diploma. That's not good enough, as you've heard me say. We need to ensure that the graduates of Milford High School, whether they're in our mainstream program or our alternative program, are either college or career ready. If we've not accomplished that, we've not done right by our students. And so we need to ensure that the program is hyper-focused on preparing students for whatever that post-secondary plan may be. And then the fourth element is relationships. And again, we want to build on, I think, one of the great successes of the Pathways program is that by creating a small community with frankly a much better student to staff ratio than we see in the overall building, and more intensive counseling and SEL supports, we can support students who frankly have had a lot of negative experiences in school and try to make school a really positive place for them. And that's a big lift, and I think a huge part of that is the affective experience for students. It's at the core, it's all about the relationships that they have with their classmates and with the staff that work with them in the program. So to build a little bit on what Steve shared earlier, the vision here is that the program is, while alternative, is something of a hybrid. This is a point that I want to highlight. So there is going to be a traditional academic element of the program. And this is going to be in mathematics, in biology, and in our electives, as Steve mentioned. So to just reiterate what Steve said, one of the great strengths of coming to a school like Milford High School is that we have an incredible breadth of elective offerings. We want to make sure that our students have full access to those elective offerings because that's what really makes school rich for a lot of our students. In biology, we do need to prepare students for the MCAS. And we believe that to clear students over the MCAS hurdle, that's going to be best accomplished within a traditional biology classroom. And in mathematics, where again students need to clear the MCAS hurdle, we believe that we're going to be able to best meet students' needs in traditionally leveled math classes. We believe that at this stage, a strictly individualized, project-based approach to mathematics is not the appropriate way to go. We think mathematics is fundamentally different from other disciplines at the secondary level and requires a type of direct instruction for students to be successful in making gains in mathematics that distinguishes it from other disciplines. But we want to add to that traditional program this individualized project-based learning. And we believe that once students have cleared the biology MCAS, that they can complete their science requirements through an individualized project-based approach as opposed to a traditional science classroom. And we believe that in English, that even starting at grade 9 and grade 10, that we can help students clear the MCAS hurdle through a far more individualized project-based approach. The teaching of critical reading and critical writing skills we believe that we can accomplish across a wide range of literature and topics that students are interested in. And in social studies, we believe that we can also help students achieve proficiency in social studies standards, both in terms of their content knowledge and their skills, through a highly individualized project-based approach. I think social studies, which is my former discipline, I think has a level of flexibility to it, and the humanities in general, that is different from mathematics in particular. And then the third piece that we want to add on to this to really kind of round this out is there needs to be a very strong career technical component to this program. we want students to have an opportunity to go on for post-secondary training. But we think it's critical that students leave here with a skill set that allows them to be successful in the workforce should they choose to go that route. So that means that we want all students in the alternative program not only participating in our career and technical education electives, but participating in work-based learning in their junior and senior year, where they're participating in co-ops, internships, or apprenticeships as a way to be in the field and getting those hard skills, soft skills, and networks that are going to be required for post-secondary success in the workforce. We think with all three of these sort of elements together, the traditional, the individualized project-based learning, and the career and technical education, we can provide students with a much more personalized learning experience than what we offer in our mainstream program. And for students who've experienced a lot of failure in school, for students who've been chronically disengaged from school, we think that this level of personalization is going to be critical to their post-secondary success. In closing here, and I want to wrap up and be respectful of your time and also leave a moment for questions, I want to just give Steve a moment to talk a little bit more about this this educational jargon that we're using, individualized project-based learning, and try to give you a clear picture of what we mean by that.
So, that image is one of my favorite images that I've seen kind of through this whole research project. Any school I've gone to has had this exact thing. I think the big thing is this, is working with a team. You have your coordinator, your subject teachers, your special education teachers, working as a group to create this individualized plan for each student that is going to be in there, okay? This portfolio assessment that Josh has talked about, making sure that there are those strong standards that are being met for each of those things that are going to be in the portfolio. I went to a couple of schools last year. The portfolio assessment was something that the students viewed as a proud piece of all of their work put together, and that was something that they really took a lot of pride in. And when they got to that junior, senior year of working into that potential internship, whatever you want to call it, work site, it was something that they used moving forward as well. The pacing is going to be very different. It's not going to be, okay, so everyone on Friday we're taking a test. Totally different, you know? It's not that I have to take a test on Friday and then we all do. Well, you guys may be working on something today, and then, you know, Laura, you may be working on something tomorrow and working in this, and you guys may be totally different around the room. It's individualized to what your strengths are going to be in that specific subject area, and moving forward to hit those different type of things that we need. And how can we use the individualized support to help them with their academics and their post-secondary plan? I think that's the biggest thing. The kids need the support. And the more support we can show them and give to them, the more I know, and I've seen this, they're going to give back in return. And not back to us, back to themselves. And enrich themselves and move forward and give them more opportunities as they move forward in their high school career.
So the last thing that I'll add, and then we'd be happy to take any questions that you have in terms of trying to create a vision for you for what we mean by individualized project-based learning, is that when you come into what we hope is that when you come into our alternative classroom, you're not going to see the teacher delivering a lesson plan. Right? The teacher is not going to be providing whole group instruction to the entire class on a daily basis. There will certainly be times where there's going to be whole group direct instruction. But I think what you're going to see when you come into the classroom is you're going to see students working, and you're going to see adults sitting with individual kids assisting them on their work. Right? So you might see the coordinator sitting with a student, helping that student to develop their next project to demonstrate their proficiency in a set of standards that they haven't yet reached. You might see a special educator working with perhaps 3 students who are all working on a major research paper to demonstrate their proficiency in the social science standards. And then you might see an assistant working with a student who's producing a lab report in chemistry to demonstrate their proficiency in the chem standards. And then you might see another 2 or 3 students working independently, right? Waiting for sort of a chance to sort of get that individualized support, but structures have been in place where they don't need an adult sitting next to them to sort of get working, because they come in, they've got their projects, and they're ready to roll. So we hope that from the student perspective, that their participation in the program is going to feel like something that's fundamentally different from what they've experienced previously, and we hope is going to feel relevant, useful, engaging, and personalized to their interests. So thank you for your time and sort of listen to us. We're excited to continue working on this. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about where we're trying to go.
I'll open it up if anyone has any questions. It's an amazing program, and I know we've spoken offline about something similar to this for a while. Steve, this is great stuff in the direction that we definitely need to go in. Just curious, I know we talked a lot about, by the end of the first quarter freshman year or the end of the second half freshman year, the GPA tends to not move a lot between the end of freshman year and senior year. Do you anticipate this program having an impact over that, and are we redirecting students that are not on a college path to more of a technical acumen through this program? And then also, what qualifies a student to get into this program?
Sure. So I think let me start off by answering your question by talking about something you didn't ask and we failed to sort of mention, which is like, so how many students are we talking about serving here, right? So we're looking at serving somewhere between 8 to 12 students per grade level. So somewhere between sort of 30, I'd say 32 to 40 students is sort of our target range. So this is serving a very small percentage of Milford High School students. So I think in terms of the committee's heard me talk on multiple occasions about my vision for developing a mainstream program here that promotes career readiness as effectively as we promote college readiness. I think our alternative program is something that is going to be able to give kids access to those career readiness programs, but it's also provide them with something very different. So I think we're going to have a lot of kids that my hope is that we'll have a lot of students taking advantage of our career readiness program that have nothing to do with our alternative program. The alternative program serving a much smaller group of kids. So, and in terms of sort of who we're looking to pull in, we're looking to pull in students who have a history of underperformance, right? And I think what we mean by underperformance can mean different things for different students, right? For some students, underperformance means they've experienced a lot of failure in schools, right? For some kids, underperformance may mean, they haven't been failing classes, but they've been getting C's and D's, and they're not putting their effort into it because it's not meaningful for them, right? So we're looking for students who've not been engaged in our program, who've not been achieving to their potential, and students who are genuinely interested in families who are genuinely interested in trying a different approach to learning. So to reiterate something that Steve said earlier, I think Pathways became a program that students were placed into, right? We hope that Vision Plus is going to be a program where we recruit students, right? But just because they're recruited doesn't mean that they don't have to go in if they don't want to go in. And just because we recruit them doesn't mean that we're going to accept them in, right? There needs to be a fairly intensive process by which, the director, the staff of the program, and ultimately me, that I am also involved in working with students and families to determine whether or not this really is the right fit for that individual student. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I do think that buy-in piece is real important, because if it's something that you really want to work towards, for however long it's going to be that you're in high school, you've got to want it to a degree. You've got to really buy into what it is that you're going to do, and it is a different style of education. It's going to take some work.
Yes.
So they've got to buy into that.
100%. And thank you again. Again, it's excellent work.
Thank you for sharing all this with us. This sounds like a tremendous opportunity for our students. And I'm sure a lot of work and planning went into this, obviously, and you're passionate about it. I just had a question. If a student was really career focused, would they still have the opportunity to go to college at the end of this?
Yeah. So absolutely. I think we do need to make a sort of a clear distinction, and we will with families and students around sort of what type of college education students are going to be prepared for.
Okay.
I don't think that the alternative program is going to be the right pathway for the student who aspires to a 4-year baccalaureate degree directly out of high school.
Okay.
Our students are going to be very well positioned to apply to community colleges, which can be a springboard to a 4-year baccalaureate, or that could be the destination. It could be an associate's degree, or it could be some sort of certificate or sort of other professional credential that's gained at a community college. My hope, consistent with what you've heard me say before, is I believe that probably somewhere between 98 and 99% of our students do need some level of post-secondary education if they're going to be successful after high school. And that would hold true for the alternative program as well. So my hope is that, the vast majority, almost all of our students in the alt program are going on to some type of post-secondary training.
Okay.
And I think for some of those students, it's going to be a 2-year associate's degree, and there may be some for whom that 2 years associate's degree is a springboard to a 4-year baccalaureate.
Okay.
But I think for families and students that are looking for the 4-year baccalaureate pathway, this is not the recommended pathway.
Just to double off what Josh said here, I think it's important, when we met with Lisa Harney from the DESE, the one thing that she was really adamant about was saying that, you know, whenever you make these type of programs, you don't want to close off any kind of pathway to anyone.
Right.
You know, you don't want to tell a student, well, if you come in here, it's over, this is the only way you can go, because that's not what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be, we're going to open up more opportunities for
Right.
you. And I do think, you know, going to visit some of our community colleges, the work that is being done with some of them in the area, I've been to Mass Bay twice this year. It's incredible. Some of the stuff that they're doing, the programs that they have, that a lot of our students would be able to benefit from.
Yeah. And so these students could eventually get into that program, no problem. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Have we tracked any of the students that have graduated from our school and graduated from that program and see where they're at, you know, 2 or 3 years down the road?
From Pathways?
From Pathways program.
Yeah, we are still in touch with some of our students. Actually, last year, we had a program, I know, Josh, Kevin, you would come in, we had a kind of a speaker program where we had some alumni coming back, talk about things that they were doing. We have some of our students that were still at 4-year schools, there were some at 2-year schools, and some that were in the workforce. And then we had a couple that weren't as successful, and they came in and talked about things they wish they had done differently. So I think that played a nice role with our students last year, and you know, I'm really high on the alumni factor. I mean, not to be biased or anything, but you know, I think it's important to have students not just in the school working with each other. I think that community feel is important, but having students come back that may have gone through previous pathways or whatever we're going to work towards here with Vision Plus, and see that you know, they can share those stories with each other. And you know, us as adults could say things all day long, but sometimes it really resonates when your peers say that back to you.
The alumni actually interacted with the current students in the Pathways program.
That was last year, yes.
Excellent. Yeah. And is that intended to hopefully happen again this year?
Yeah, I would love to. I'd love to have some kids back to talk. You know, I do know that there's still some open lines of communication. Kids come in end of the day, you know, when the bell rings, there are kids that'll show up at the school and talk, come to my office or to other teachers to come back and visit. So it's always nice to see that.
Excellent. Thank you.
What's the grading policy within the Pathways? Is it the same grading policy that applies to all other students?
So in our traditional Pathways program, students were being graded on a similar sort of grade scale and credit scale. And part of what we're hoping to do with a standards-based portfolio and a competency-based approach to learning is to take also an alternative approach to sort of grading and assessment going forward. And that's something that I'll be looking forward to speaking to the community about at a later date.
Okay. And you mentioned how the program would open up doors for some of the students, and you mentioned the vocational track and getting them involved in some of those programs. If they're in the Pathways program, so if they weren't in the Pathways program and they were failing and they were absent, they wouldn't qualify for a lot of the extracurricular activities that you know, they might be passionate about and might help increase their engagement with school, but they just don't qualify to play baseball or softball or whatever, right? Or play an instrument. So if they're in the Pathways program, are they allowed to start participating in some of the extracurricular activities and some of the sports? Or?
Yeah, so our students who are in the ALT program are going to have full access to the extracurricular program of the school, assuming sort of they're meeting our eligibility requirements. And I think because we're interested in adopting a different approach to assessment and grading, I think we will need to kind of flesh out what those eligibility requirements will look like for students in the ALT program. But we absolutely want students in the alternative program fully involved in the community life of the school.
Okay.
It's great to hear your passion and motivation as you speak about this. I see it certainly to be life-changing for those, 40 students that get into the program, so I think that's really inspiring. Is the thought a next fall rollout for it?
That is our hope.
And
yeah.
are there budgetary implications, Josh, that need to be contemplated?
No, I don't think it has a fiscal impact at this stage. It requires us to be thoughtful about how we use our personnel. But because we've had an alternative program previously with personnel assigned to it, we don't need to make any sort of major reallocations or shifts in order to staff the program.
Got it. And is the thought that individuals, they wouldn't transition out of it per se? I wouldn't think. They wouldn't be geared towards students that would
So that would not be the goal, but it would be absolutely an option. So if we had a student who, to come back to Ms. Njemi's question about sort of college readiness, if we were to have a student who started off in freshman, sophomore year, and let's say that we were able to help that student experience success, and the student's post-secondary vision was to change, and they would say, you know what, like I think I want to go the 4-year college route, then I think we're going to say, all right, well, it's time to kind of get onto the 4-year college pathway, which is going to mean diving into the mainstream program of the school. So, you know, we will maintain the highest possible level of flexibility to be responsive to the needs of the students in the program. And if that means that the way to meet their needs is by having them exit the program, then that's what we'll do.
Sure, okay. And is it primarily coordination with the guidance counselors, like at the 8th grade level, that would help facilitate identification of the students that would participate?
Yeah, so we're looking forward to working really closely with the staff at Stacy to try to identify students for recruitment. And our hope is that we will begin that recruitment process probably sometime in late March or early April. Because again, we want to be very deliberate about it, which means you know, meeting with students and their families, both to educate them about the program, so they can decide if this is really something that they want to do, and we can get to know their students and families and figure out whether or not we think that they're the right fit as well.
Okay, excellent. And just one more question. Is this a DESE certified or credentialed program in any way? Like I saw that some are listed on their website. I was just curious how that works.
So the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education does license alternative schools.
Got it, okay.
This would be an alternative program within Milford High School.
Thanks.
So we would issue a standard Milford High School diploma to the graduates of Business Plus.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. Thank you.
And just to piggyback on that, to that point, how do you determine whether or not the alternative program is the right fit versus an alternative school for a student?
So here in the Milford region, there are no, there's really no alternative schools within any of the bordering towns of Milford. There are specialized schools that we send students to for special education outplacements, but those are different from alternative high schools. So, some of the closer alternative high schools is Marlborough has an alternative high school that's called the Phoenix Program. Fitchburg has an alternative high school called Goodrich Academy. I believe there's an alternative high school in Framingham, but I'm not certain about that.
Leominster started one, the Leominster Center of Excellence.
Yeah, Leominster has one. So there's actually relatively few communities, and it's typically larger urban communities that have standalone alternative high schools. You need to operate at a certain scale to make it cost effective. So what's much more common is to see alternative programs that exist within a high school. So students in Milford who wish to attend an alternative high school, frankly, they need to have the means to sort of travel as though they were participating in the school choice program. And so I think it is important to distinguish between alternative education and special education outplacements. Am I making sense there?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I was confusing with the special education outplacements, because I know we have some students that we send to Bi-County Collaborative and some other things.
And that would be through the IEP process.
Okay.
One last one. So do you guys have an engagement model with Stacy? Do you have a point contact in whom you're going to work intimately with?
Yeah, so I mean, the start of the process will be for me to sit down with Nancy Angelini, Noah Collins, and Nadine Clifford, and sort of get them fully briefed up on our vision, and then I'll be working with their administrative team and their guidance department to sort of coordinate that process of student identification and recruitment.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I just want to commend Josh and his whole team, because this is just one example of many kind of shifts and moves they've made over the last couple of years. You look at, I think more aggressive early college programming, the Vision Plus programming, Project Lead the Way courses, the building trades, the focus on kind of developing, I think, a robust internship program, I think is going to make for kind of a higher quality experience for all students. And one thing I love about, again, and I'm going to say Josh and his whole team, because I think all the teachers are committed to this as well, is we're trying to kind of meet the needs of the students who are looking at the highly selective colleges, to students who are going right into careers, and everybody in between. We're trying to kind of hit those needs, and I think we're putting a lot of great programming in place and making shifts you know, where we need to make some shifts. So,
Yeah, well,
congratulations.
thank you, and it is just a statement of fact to say that all of these changes we've made have been possible with the support of the school committee. You know better than anyone in the community that a lot of these changes have required investments, and we're really grateful to the committee for supporting those investments and working with us to make these new opportunities available to students. And I'm pleased to be here tonight telling you that this does not have a fiscal impact, because that's not usually what my presentations are about.
Oh, Steve's labor.
Thank you, guys. A couple of questions that I had, you've already answered, at the committee, but a great presentation. It seems you guys are doing a great job, and it's received well, so my congrats to you both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Milford Public Schools policy, first reading of field trip guidelines and protocol. Who wants to, Megan?
Sure, so we're just providing the updated policy around field trips and the protocol that sort of align with that. Jim, there were, some interesting sort of requirements or things that were prohibited in the original. So we just kind of sat back and took another stab and said, let's just do a clean write-up of it. So that's the document that everyone has in front of them. So I would definitely encourage people to read through it because it really is a rewrite.
Yeah, it looks...
A lot of the fundamental concepts in there have stayed the same, but certainly took out some things that we didn't think were relevant and tried to make it more current.
There's a lot of red, so...
Mostly red.
Mostly red. All right, well, thank you, Megan, for that. We
And,
will...
sorry, Joe, just add, it was done in conjunction with Lucy Dagnes, the head of nursing, in terms of, for her approval as well.
All right, thank you for that. And that is a first reading, so no vote is required for that. Thank you, Megan.
Sure.
Next on the agenda, report of superintendent of schools. We have the school calendar for next year.
Correct. So this is the 2019-2020 school calendar. Three kind of changes to the calendar. One is, and this is something we've been talking about for a few years now, is Shining Star will not have school on early release days. And, different schools have different versions of this. Like the high school during midterms and finals have half days. There's a kind of a staggered start for kindergarten, and a lot of it has to do with transportation and just the timing of the programming. So it just doesn't make a lot of sense to have, bring the preschool students in for what ends up being an abbreviated version of an abbreviated schedule.
Right.
The faculty and the TAs and BAs will report for the full day for professional development, so there's no impact on anybody's employment situation, which I think is an important consideration. The other piece is the school committee meeting dates have changed slightly. And all these changes were reviewed by the not the Massachusetts Teachers Association, but the Milford Teachers Association, and they've given their seal of approval for the calendar. And this does require a vote by the committee.
Has everyone taken a look? Is everyone all set?
Quick question.
Go ahead, Chris.
Is it ever, and it's always comes up every year, that late August time, has it ever been looked at to start school after that Labor Day, that Tuesday after Labor Day? Again, it's just a question that's always is raised within the community, so if you could speak to that.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why we do, there's a couple reasons why we do that, but one primary reason is if we have a year with significant snow days, it really can tend to push us back because we're really contractually obligated to finish in June 30th. And I really never want to be in a situation where we have to dig into April vacation or get creative with a couple Saturdays or something like that towards the end of the year. So it's really driven by that, and I think tradition, but more, I think we're worried about the back end if there's a particularly, snowy winter where we're losing a lot of days.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, can I get a motion to accept this calendar for next year? Motion by Jim, second by Megan. All in favor?
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Next on the agenda, town meeting warrant articles. How about it?
We have two articles before you this evening for approval. The first article is the vending machine article, and that is simply taking our generated revenue from our high school vending machines and requesting it back to school committee for our access and our purpose. And you have before you the article in the revenue totaling $6,289.05 for allocation next year. It does require a vote you want to do them both at the same time,
We're gonna do
Joe?
this right now, it's gonna be quick. This is something that we do every year too, right, Kathy?
Yes, it's
There's never been an issue, it's just something that always happens.
Mhm.
Okay. Can I get a motion to accept this
Can I ask a
article?
question?
Okay, sure, Megan.
Kathy, I'm sorry. When Josh came earlier in the year and talked about usage of the vending machine
Correct.
funds, that was like 14 grand. Could you just maybe help me explain?
So essentially, if the departments that are approved for mini grants don't access their funds,
Okay.
we essentially bring that back to school committee as unanticipated revenue for your approval again.
Okay.
So,
Got it.
you know,
So that's a subset of, or no, this, yes.
exactly.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I'm good.
No, that's okay, you good? Motion
Yeah.
by Jim, seconded by Joe, all in favor? All right.
And the second warrant is again a housekeeping article. This is essentially our agreement with Comcast that is using in the town's agreement for the Comcast funding, that the schools receive a allotment of revenue each quarter, and we don't have an amount in the article right now. So essentially what we'll do is review that prior to town meeting and do the actual rollover that's remaining in the account. If we do not vote this article, the revenue would go back to the town's general fund. So it's important that we maintain this article.
What's the price usually on that?
It ranges, essentially what we do with the revenue, as the agreement states, is maintain and upgrade our network within the high school for switches
Right,
and
right.
maintain the speed. It could be anywhere from 60 to 100,000.
Right. Do you guys feel comfortable taking a vote on this tonight? Yeah. I get a motion to accept the motion by Joe, seconded by Chris, all in favor? Thank you, guys.
Sure, just one more thing on the articles. So I know in the past we talked about an article at town meeting to appoint the superintendent as a member at large, to avoid any issues at town meeting, allowing him to speak since he doesn't live in Milford. So I don't know if you guys have had any conversations with town council about whether or not that's possible and what would be involved, but my suggestion would be that if it is possible, that we do submit an article for town meeting to appoint the superintendent as a member at large, so that no one can prevent him from speaking at town meeting.
Because you need a unanimous vote for that too, right?
Right,
Town
and
meeting
someone could
vote.
play it just takes one person to play politics and not allow him to speak, so.
I can check in with town council on that, Joe.
Okay.
And get that clarified.
And the warrants have to be in by the end of this month?
We could also check to see if we could have that extra day, because we have a meeting on the 28th. So we could take a vote on that on the 28th and submit it on the 29th.
And that one wouldn't be a particularly complex
No.
article.
Yes. All right, next, report of Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
So I just wanted to give everyone kind of an overview of the FLES program, the way that it was, and talk about a couple of other programs, foreign language programs, that people employ, I guess, and then just kind of open it up for a discussion and see what's on everyone's mind. From 1990, approximately, these are probably, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure these are the dates. 1998 to 2008, we ran a FLES program, which stands for Foreign Language in the Elementary School in Milford. It was at the K to 6 level. So started in kindergarten and ran through 6th grade. The information that I'm gonna talk to you about today came from 3 people, basically. Well, came from my own memory of what was happening with FLES, but also Deb Johnson, Stephanie Matthews, and Maria Grindel, who were all teachers in the FLES program, but who are all still currently employed in Milford in different capacities. Okay, so there was a couple different ways that our FLES program was run. it kind of made a shift from the K4 level when it got to Stacy, and it was a 5-6 program. So at the K4 level, the FLES program happened 2 times a week for approximately 45 minutes. There were several different teachers. I believe it was 1 teacher at every building, and they were basically going into classrooms. They were speaking Spanish close to 100% of the time with students. The classroom teacher would stay in the classroom, but generally it wasn't like a co-taught class. They'd be in the classroom, but not necessarily co-teaching. Teachers created lessons that were, teachers being FLES teachers, created lessons that were standards-based lessons taught in Spanish, but didn't necessarily correspond with what the general classroom was teaching. So, for example, they may talk about something like, say, the water cycle, and the classroom teacher may be talking about continents, but because as you can imagine, being a teacher that goes into every single classroom to be able to co-plan and figure out what every classroom teacher is doing is impossible. So they had their lessons that they just ran with throughout the year, and really the easiest lessons they said to deliver were math lessons, because we're talking about numbers. There isn't a lot of language with math, so those are the easiest. And they use the strategy like total physical response, which is, if they're talking about running in Spanish, then they're running. So they're using the hands, they're using pictures, it's along the same lines as how we instruct our EL students. All right, so at Stacy, students receive FLES within their core classes. So FLES teacher would be assigned to, say, a cluster, the red cluster. They would go to it would go in 6-week cycles. So for the first 6 weeks, for 2 classes, they would go to math, 2 classes in the 6-day cycle. So on day 1, they'd go to the 5 red math class. On day 4, they'd go back to the 5 red math class, and they'd do that for 6 weeks. And then they would jump to the science class, do that for 6 weeks. Then they would jump to the language arts class, 6 weeks of reading, so on and so forth. So that was the year. And again, the teachers would then, for those 6 weeks, the math teacher, for example, would be in the classroom supporting the FLES teacher, but the lesson wasn't necessarily aligned with what was going on for the other 4 days. So if they were in, again, just to use the same scenario, classroom teacher in social studies may be teaching about continents, and then the FLES teacher comes in and teaches about something else, Massachusetts, in Spanish. So although they were standards based, they weren't necessarily aligned with what the teacher was doing. And again, the instruction was given in 100% Spanish. So a little different in the way it was delivered. All right, so that was the FLES program as we had it here in Milford 10 years ago or so. Spanish immersion. So for the Spanish immersion, I got the brief overview from Mendon Upton, and they offer a full Spanish immersion program at their K-8 really range. So it starts in kindergarten, and everybody, if you want to be in part of the immersion program, you have to apply in kindergarten and enter in kindergarten. It's hard for people to enter in like 2nd, 3rd grade. So it begins in kindergarten, and grades K-2, it's 100% Spanish instruction all the time, K-2. Then when they get into the 3-5 level, it's 80% Spanish instruction. So basically, to be able to account for, say, the ELA MCAS. They teach the one ELA class in English every day, and then every other class is in Spanish. And then when you get to the 6-8 level, it's 50-50. And then from there, kids make a decision about where they want to go with foreign language in high school. So that's the immersion class. I don't know if anyone has questions on that.
How many students participate approximately?
Well, it seems to be on a downward trend. She said in the past there's been a lottery, but there hasn't been a lottery in a few years, so less than 20 per grade.
Okay.
All right, then there's this Flex program, which is foreign language exploratory, and there are some programs around with this Flex, and Deb Johnson was really knowledgeable about this kind of foreign language. So the Flex stands for foreign language as an exploratory, and it's a very shallow type of rote memorization Spanish program where you would learn like maybe the days of the week or the colors or things like that. And if you walked into a class, kids might be able to recite those things, but they couldn't have a conversation. So basically they were able to just recite words, but they couldn't like greet you with a sentence or something like that. So she just cautioned about Flex programming because those types of programs, which are approximately 2 to 3 times a week, 15 to 20 minutes, generally the classroom teacher is the one that's kind of leading the instruction. And if you were to go into a class, it may look like kids are speaking Spanish or they understand Spanish, but really they've memorized words and they couldn't have a conversation the way that they could with a FLES program or with an immersion program. And I would say then the difference between an immersion program and a FLES program is in the immersion program, kids, I don't know if they're 100% bilingual, but they're on the track to being truly bilingual and truly biliterate too, so they can read and write in Spanish. Where in FLES, there's just not enough practice to be able to say that we have kids that are 100% biliterate and bilingual. All right, so the way I see barriers to implementation about any of these programs is first and foremost is time. Obviously something has to give. So what would we cut to get any of those programming? If you did a FLES program, when would teachers co-plan? And then something to consider, could it work during like an intervention block or an ELD block? So ELD, in our split classrooms, we have half of the kids in 2 classrooms coming together and they're learning the English language development. Could the other half of the class do some kind of FLES programming where they're learning Spanish? So could it work then? Staff, this is something that all 3 teachers were very adamant about. The thing about the FLES programming and where they saw it was very difficult to pull off is you need to find teachers that are truly bilingual, but not only that, they have to have the elementary ed background. So there were times where it was very difficult to find teachers, so there was a couple of exchange teachers that came over from Spain, but they didn't have the elementary ed background. So they're trying to teach Spanish to elementary kids, and it just didn't go well. So people like that are very difficult to find. So that's another barrier. But questions we could consider for that is, could higher level foreign language students or some of our FEL students, former English learner students, could they maybe intern senior year in our elementary schools and kind of help with some of that? So it's something to consider. And then curriculum. All the curriculum that we would have to pull something like this off, we'd have to take our own curriculum basically and translate it if it isn't translated already. So where do we find time to make that happen? But some strengths on the other side, some strengths of FLES programming. And this was something that stuck with me and something that Deb Johnson said. What she liked most about the programming was that it wasn't necessarily the smartest and most gifted student that thrived. It was the children without fear, the ones that were willing to take a risk and make mistakes. Those are the kids that seem to thrive in this kind of programming. Second, one of the strengths are we're leading our kids on a path to being bilingual. I think that what I've noticed is we have three or four teachers now that were in the FLES program that are teaching. They're teaching in our bilingual program. They're either teaching Spanish or they're teaching at the elementary level. It's kind of that dual classroom. So I think that's a benefit. It all started with the FLES programming in the elementary level, and they grew this love for the foreign language and kept going. Learning another language helps build English skills. Students can be assets to other students who are learning English because they're able to communicate in both languages. And then the other thing is the students are developing an empathy for English learners, and I think whenever we can help build that empathy for other kids and other people, I think we're also working on our SEL. And then the final thing was kids had fun in the program. So I think ultimately it's going to come down to the time and then staffing. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or wants to start some kind of dialogue on this.
Thank you. You actually answered some of my questions already, given your presentation. Thank you. I was wondering, what the staffing and what time and like the background story would be to something like that. You've already answered that, so thank you. So I'll open it up if anybody else has any questions.
So the early language immersion programs are viewed as enrichment programs for younger kids. But what are some other types of programs that you see in other communities that are enrichment based or considered enrichment programs?
Some of the STEM programming that other communities have. I think Josh laid out an alternative program that in other communities, that kind of pathway goes down through the middle school. So I don't necessarily think it's a enrichment program, but different pathway, right? Mm-hmm. As far as other program, I didn't really investigate that for this, so I'd have to do
Ashland
more
has
on
kind of
that.
a Montessori type program at the elementary level that I don't know if you necessarily call it enrichment, but it's an alternative to like a more traditional classroom experience. Would be another example, kind of locally, of something
Okay.
going on that's outside of like world language or foreign language.
But are you interested more in enrichment at the middle school or enrichment at elementary school?
Just curious to know what other opportunities are out there, because some of the feedback that we hear from parents occasionally is that their children aren't being challenged enough, or that there isn't enough enrichment, what they refer to as enrichment program at the younger grades, and some of the feedback we got as part of the school choice discussion as well. So I'm just curious to know if there are additional programs that we could consider offering in Milford.
Okay. All right. I'll look into it. Get back to you on it.
Questions? Anybody? Okay. All right. Thank you. Great, I appreciate it.
Just one question on it. I guess, where do you want to go from here?
Well, I was curious because I had heard it before in the past that we've done it, and you told me, we haven't done it in like 10 years, and I know Laura has brought it up in the past, and my wife's talked to me. I've read some articles. That's just why I was bringing it up, to get some kind of a conversation. And you already answered some of my questions. That's why, figured we talk about it real quick, and if anybody else had any questions, and we'd talk about it. If not, we could always talk about it some other time.
Right. And I also think we've been having a lot of conversations around the per pupil spending and the net school spending, and how Milford is about 20% lower. So if we were able to get the additional funding to bring us to parity, bring us to the state average, we need to be very clear as to what we're going to do with those funds, right? So we know we need additional social services. We know we need additional administrative support. We may need some additional teachers in certain schools, but there's also additional programming that we could offer if we had those funds. So I think it'd be important for us to clearly define what are we going to do with that additional funding if we're able to get it, and what's the benefit to the district and to the community.
So I just had asked Craig, is project lead the way at the elementary school level? That to me would be something that would be enrichment opportunity for the students. Those are really neat classes that allow our students to kind of learn different types of learning, and I think that would be really neat. But also like robotics and technology and those kinds of things. A lot of the coding and things that they can be doing at the lower elementary levels.
I agree. We have Project Lead the Way at Woodland, not at the K2, but it really becomes a matter of there's only so much time in a day too. So I think right now, if we talk to our elementary teachers, they're feeling overwhelmed with the amount of programming they're trying to squeeze into the time that they have. So I guess I would be cautious about a program like FLES, just because teachers are already feeling overwhelmed with the foundations, the math programming that they're trying to deliver, and then the reading program that they're trying to build. I would just be worried that now we're throwing this on too, and we are talking about ST Math and iReady and all these different things that I just think it's too much.
I think it's a phenomenal idea, and I would love to see it explored, Craig. I think, to your point, I think the time is the biggest factor. I'd love to see them get another recess if they could, right? I mean, I think the day is just so tight. I wonder if there's a way to explore it more in the near term, like the box program, like a before school or after school, where sort of a grant funded or just, offer different sessions during the year, be it Project Lead the Way or the second language, just an offering. And then you can see what participation you're getting too.
So I guess that's to Joe's point. I think that when I look at, I'm guessing that when I look into enrichment programs, most of them are going to be before school or after school and not happening during the day. Like, we offer STEM opportunities and other kinds of opportunities after school. And it's unfortunate, but there's only so much time in the day that and kids have, unless we come up with a way to for kids to kind of test out of the general class, and then they're able to go to another class, which we probably could do. It's going to take a little time as well.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. Yeah. Next on the agenda, Assistant Superintendent. Kathy, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Joe. I have for the committee's approval this evening 7 warrants in the amount of $303,012.53.
You get a motion to approve the warrants. Motion by Laura, second by Joe. All in favor?
I also have a list of the latest appointments from our previous meeting, as well as a course reimbursement request in the amount of $8,366.88. Which
Motion.
does,
Yep, motion to approve that. Motion by Chris, Seconded by Jim. All in favor?
We also have 2 out-of-state travel requests, both from the Hotel and Hospitality group, and one is to travel to Providence, and the other to Connecticut. Both, as you can see, are a annual trip to advance their curriculum and their growth as a group, and experience some of the outside hotels and resorts. The Mohegan Sun Trip is for Friday, April 26th. 18 students will be attending, and it is for the grade 12 kids.
Awesome. Can I get a motion to approve these field trips around the state? Motion by Jim, seconded by Joe. Okay.
Also, the Hotel and Hospitality grade 11 would like to travel to Providence on March 18th.
And motion to accept that one as well. Motion by Megan, seconded by Joe. All in favor?
And that's all for this evening.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. Next on the agenda is subcommittee updates, wellness. I will touch on that real quick. I am on that as well as Jim is, but unfortunately I wasn't able to make it. Jim wasn't able to make it, and I've emailed Judy for the minutes on that. I don't know if you were able to
I can
make it.
actually share.
Touch that?
Yeah, I can share a few things.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. The just a few quick updates. We had a discussion about kind of the smoking nicotine delivery system policy, looking at vaping, which is kind of an epidemic across the country right now. And we're going to start exploring potentially some cessation programs and diversion programs, and we'll probably have more on that maybe later in the spring or early in the fall, depending on how quickly we progress.
Kevin, just a question. That's not detection.
No,
Okay.
no. That's a completely
Yep,
different.
just wanted to make sure I was
Yeah.
following
Yeah. This is when somebody is caught vaping in school, what are some of the programs maybe we can divert
Great.
students into?
Thanks.
Staff Wellness Week is March 4th through 8th, and there's a number of great programs being developed. Healthy Kids Week and the school day games is April 8th through 12th, which we do on an annual basis, and the school day games is a Special Olympics program. We're restarting the box program at both Memorial and Brookside, so it's relevant that you guys just brought that up. And just make sure I hit on all the key. Yeah, I think those are the big topics.
Yeah.
We also dug into SEL a little bit as well. And Lisa Kincaid provided an update. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Kevin. And budget. Who wants to tackle the budget? Kathy, do you want to tackle that?
Sure.
If you don't mind, or yeah.
Our last meeting, we met with FinCom, continued to discuss our funding at the state level and the local level, and how it applies to our new initiatives in our level service budget. And I believe we're meeting again in a few weeks to discuss further requests.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to add, Kevin?
I think it was a good dialogue with the finance subcommittee. They asked a number of questions, we responded, and I think it's just an ongoing dialogue as we prepare the budget.
Next on the agenda, school liaison updates. I know everyone pretty much gave an update last week, so I do appreciate that.
Joe, just got one.
Yep.
Actually, one more of a question, because this came up in a conversation with Corey, and I think it came up at the Citizens for Milford Forum as well. The doors down at Shining Star, any movement there? Have those been fixed yet?
I think that's been addressed, Joe, but I can double check that.
Okay. So there's the main doors that you walk in that weren't locking.
Right.
Which
Yeah,
is an
no,
issue.
I think that's been addressed, but let me check.
And then there's
let
the
me check on
doors that go out to the playground too, that at some point need to be.
Yeah, I can check on that. I think that's been resolved though.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe.
And Joe, just on my side from Woodland. So yeah, back on January 26th, Woodland hosted the Greatest Showman performances. It was a packed house. There were multiple acts presented by students and also an act performed by staff.
Which Tim Kiernan was a star of.
Yes, exactly, yes. Last night was the Woodlands PTO Decades dinner dance. It was a great time by families that were in attendance. Upcoming on February 27th, there will be an event at Urban Air for a Spirit Night. And on March 1st, there will be a Fast Athletics Sports Night. And also, during the day, there was an ST Math and a visit from Gigi the Penguin, which I know Mr. Consigli was at, and I asked him if he could describe that event, because I heard it was quite entertaining.
Well, the purpose of the visit, so there's a gentleman by the name of James Dunseith. He came into our classrooms and was kind of modeling lessons for our teachers. So showing the teachers how they could use the puzzle, they call them puzzle talks. So how you can use the puzzles from ST Math with whole group instruction, and showing them how they could use this puzzle talk to kind of springboard a whole group lesson, which was a different way of thinking for teachers. ST Math is a computer-based program, so a lot of teachers are thinking that you just send the kids to the computer, the kids just use ST Math, and we're done with it. But he was showing them a different way of thinking, and it went really, really well. Midway through, it came to lunchtime. Gigi the Penguin happened to come by and came to third grade lunch, and it was an absolute mob scene. The third graders were like, Gigi! And they ran after him. It got pretty ugly.
And Craig won't share this, but he was more excited than anybody.
I definitely was.
Yeah.
But
and
no, it was a
Gigi's
good
a
visit.
character that is on the ST Math program, correct?
So with ST Math, kids are conceptually trying to solve these math problems without words, and basically try to get the penguin from this side of the screen to that side of the screen. So when they figure out the puzzle, it either drops a barrier or releases a barrier or puts a brick down or something so that the little penguin can walk across. So
Thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right, next on the agenda is future agenda items. Anybody have anything they want to bring up for next meetings?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, Chris.
So, go back to it real quick. Excuse me a second. And it's going to be basically to review our turf field policy. So right now we charge outside groups for use of the field, which I understand, but also we also charge Milford youth groups. So I just want to review that policy. First, it is a policy, so KF-2. We'll go to the policy subcommittee first. Let's look at that. But I just wanted to make everybody aware that there's something that, as our various community youth groups use our fields that have already been built, just trying to be mindful of their budgets and what they're spending their money on, and how it impacts their groups and the parents that have, in a sense, have already funded these fields and kind of they're paying again for the usage of them. So again, we'll discuss that and come back to the full committee.
Are you thinking policy subcommittee?
I think because it is a policy, I guess we would start there first, discuss it within that policy subcommittee. If anybody has any, any opinions, we can, please attend that policy subcommittee, but we'll make everybody aware of it. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Anybody else? Joe?
So along those lines, based on the comments that were said earlier by the parent about the grading policy and the honor roll, that should probably be addressed at the subcommittee level as well. And then the other thing I had, don't know if it's necessarily a future agenda item or just we probably should schedule another budget meeting at some point before we meet with FinCom again.
Okay.
So just as a school committee, let's get together and let's talk through the budget and next steps there.
Okay. I'll Melissa send an invitation. We'll look at some dates.
Can I ask
That's
a
a good
question though? The honor roll, it's a Stacy honor roll, right?
Mhm.
Is that are you saying that's to be discussed at a policy subcommittee? Because I'm not sure it's a policy.
So I think the issue is it's a multifaceted issue, and so the honor roll is looking at all classes and the grades in all classes, including specials. So I think that from a policy perspective, or maybe it's a grading policy, not necessarily a school committee policy, but should specials be graded the way they currently are graded? And if they should should there be some sort of requirement that those grades are provided as part of the mid-year report that
Yeah,
parents
so-
get?
Right.
Because
Yep.
today they're not getting that grade, so they don't know where their child stands in some of these specials.
Yeah, so I think that's in the handbook, I'm not sure that there's a policy about it, so, what, I guess, would it be more appropriate to discuss it at this level rather than the subcommittee?
Yeah, if that, I mean, that's fine too.
I don't know,
If it's
I
not.
don't know, what,
I would almost recommend that the school committee charge the superintendent of schools to have a conversation with the Stacy administration, and then we bring it back as a future agenda item.
To the full committee.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
That sounds good.
All right, so that's what I'll do.
Okay.
Sorry, just, Kevin, I just wanted to request, can you bring back a timeline between now and June of the long-range ed plan, sort of
Mhm.
next steps, just so everyone's
Yep.
clear in terms of what's happening on?
Yeah, I can do that at the next meeting.
That'd be great,
Yep.
thanks.
All right, old business.
I've got one quick thing. I sent an email to the committee today, I just want to make you aware of that, there was a request to do, school visits. And my email was very brief, so I just want to clarify a couple of things. We're going to schedule 3. You're welcome to attend any and all of those sessions. We're going to try to separate out this, like, different schools at each visit, so.
Based on that, I know one's before town meeting vote, or the townwide vote, and then the 2 after. So just based off of, obviously, we'll have at least one new member. So do we want to try to push everything beyond the vote, so we grabs the entire, like, new committee that we're going to have?
I can add
Would it be
dates too.
beneficial?
Yeah, I can add dates too.
Yep.
If,
And
what-
it's
what-
just the one date in March.
Yeah.
The April 12th, because the town vote is first week in April, so.
Yeah,
that's
so
the exact date.
the only tricky piece is, like, just, I have limited availability in February to kind of take you guys around, so I try to do one a month, basically.
I understand,
Was kind of my
yes.
goal.
Yep.
That's kind of the long and short of it.
Sure, no, I understand.
And just as a reminder, the last school we did was the high school.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily, put that at the bottom of the list, I guess.
All right.
Kevin, I know you were extending the same to FinCom, or are those intended to be separate?
Yeah, I would say they're kind of separate,
Okay.
separate invitations.
Great.
Because I do more of a quick tour through all the schools in that
Yep.
case. We'll just want to, we'll look at specific programs when we go
Great.
in.
Thank
All right, with that, we do have executive session this evening, so I will take roll call before adjournment.
Yes.
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 Alright, and with that, can I get a motion to adjourn this meeting? Motion by Jim, second by Megan. All in favor? Thank you very much.